This morning, as he was leaving the White House for his trip to Argentina for the G20 summit, President Trump was talkative in response to reporters' questions about Michael Cohen's guilty plea today. But every minute the president spent in the air today, the story on the ground was getting worse and worse. And so when he got off the plane tonight in Argentina, here is everything that the president had to say. Less than an hour after Air Force One took off today, the president announced on Twitter that he was canceling his planned one-on-one meeting with Vladimir Putin at the G20 summit. That meeting surely would have provoked questions to both Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin about their involvement in discussions of a Trump Tower deal in Moscow that reportedly would have included a bribe of a $50 million apartment for Vladimir Putin. Joining us now is MSNBC political analyst Ben Rhodes. He served as Deputy National Security Advisor to President Obama, and David Corn is still with us. Ben, your reaction to the developments today and what it has meant for what was going to be the one-on-one with Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin?
Well, first of all, I think it's very important to note that what we learned today definitively is that Russia knew that Trump had engaged in these actions of trying to get business through Trump Tower in Moscow. So Russia had the goods on Trump. Russia knew something that was blackmailable of Trump. They had leverage on Trump. And so when we look back at how Trump has behaved, genuflecting before Putin in Helsinki, trashing our allies, trashing NATO, we may have a clear explanation of why, which is that Putin knew something about Trump that Trump probably didn't want it in the public space. People have to be wondering, what else does Putin know about Trump that he doesn't want in the public space? And I can guarantee you that all these world leaders at the G20 are wondering the same thing. And so this is really an embarrassment to the United States.
Let's take a look back at the last one-on-one summit between these two and the question that Vladimir Putin answered honestly.
Did you want President Trump to win the election, and did you direct any of your officials to help him do that?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Because he talked about bringing the U.S.-Russia relationship back to normal.
Ben Rhodes, it was hard then to imagine it getting worse than that, but questions to Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump about a bribe of a $50 million apartment in Moscow would have been even more interesting to watch.
Well, yeah, and Lawrence, I think the important point here is, first of all, why was Michael Cohen involved in these dealings with the Russian government? If you want to build a building in Russia, you don't necessarily have to go to the Kremlin for that. But, you know, I think even more importantly here is that if you're Vladimir Putin, what would you rather have? A $50 million apartment in a gaudy Trump Tower, or a president of the United States who you have compromising information on? And a president of the United States who's going to upend the international order and diminish the standing of the United States in the world? Vladimir Putin got what he wanted here, and that wasn't an apartment in Trump Tower. It was Donald Trump in the White House.
And David Corn, clearly Donald Trump would not have been able to figure out any way of dealing with Vladimir Putin publicly this week of all weeks.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can just imagine the questions at the press conference. But, you know, since 2013, Trump has been saying positive things about Putin. When he first announced that he was bringing the Miss Universe contest to Moscow in the summer of 2013, he started tweeting, "Will Vladimir Putin be my best friend? Will he come?" And he started then saying all these flattering things about Putin for all the years leading up until the 2016 campaign. So I think he's always had this idea of doing business with Putin. He's also had a psychological affinity for Putin as some sort of strongman who he wanted to emulate. But I think Ben is exactly right. By dealing with Putin secretly in that point in time, he gave Putin the signal that he was ready to do underhanded business with Putin, and it was also information that Putin could drop publicly if he wanted to. But I don't think he ever needed to blackmail Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump was always in his pocket.
And Ben, this is a moment where the President of the United States would in some form be confronting Vladimir Putin about the aggressive actions he has taken in Ukraine, and we have a President of the United States who can't even speak about it.
Yeah, and first of all, nobody believes he canceled this meeting because of the situation with Ukraine. That took place days ago, and Trump was still planning to meet with him. This meeting was only canceled after the Michael Cohen news came out. And think about the message that sends to the world, Lawrence. It suggests that all President Trump cares about is saving his own hide. And he's even willing to use very serious international crises like the situation between Russia and Ukraine as some type of Twitter cover story for canceling a meeting that is now politically difficult for him to undertake. We've got real problems in the world. We've got a trade war with China. We've got these tensions between Russia and Ukraine. We've got a Saudi crown prince who's at this summit who recently had a journalist murdered in a third country and got a green light for Trump, from Trump for those actions. The U.S. president is missing in action and dealing with all these crises because he's dealing with a crisis of his own making in the United States. That's very dangerous and destabilizing, I think, for both the United States and for all those world leaders who are gathered at the G20.
And Ben, Michelle Kaczynski's tweeting about the trip, saying that a source is telling her that Trump headed into the G20 in a terrible mood, spooked and completely distracted. And Ben, they're saying he's canceling other possible one-on-one meetings.
Yeah, and if you think about that, he canceled a meeting with the president of South Korea. Thus far, North Korea has not taken any steps to give up the nuclear weapons, despite all the praise that Donald Trump has heaped on Kim Jong-un, one of his other favorite dictators. We, again, really have a crisis here when the President of the United States cannot even conduct the most routine official business of meeting with fellow world leaders at an international summit because he's too busy tweeting defenses for his own legal problems in the United States and calling the Mueller investigation a witch hunt. This is doing real damage to the office of the presidency. It's doing real damage to American interests around the world. And we're only at the beginning of the story, Lawrence. What happens as this news continues to tighten and as more indictments come and as this gets closer and closer to Trump? I think we do have to be worried about whether he's going to lash out somehow internationally, what he's going to do to try to distract us from the very real problems he faces. And I think that that's clearly on the mind of those world leaders. I went to every G20 summit with President Obama. Every time we landed in that country where the G20 was, we were focused on the business that we had to get done there. We weren't focused on legal trouble that we were perhaps facing back in the United States because it didn't happen under Obama. So I think we're in uncharted territory here, and it's only going to get rougher in terms of those waters in the days and weeks to come.
And so, Lawrence,
go ahead, David. Go ahead.
The key thing here, to pick up on what Ben just said, is that we have a president of the United States who is compromised. Whether it's compromised or not, he is compromised. He's not able to do this job in the public interest because he is compromised and there's too much going on. He has too much baggage now, secret or otherwise, with Vladimir Putin. He cannot do the job that needs to be done.
That really is, David, the most important single last word of this discussion tonight, that the president is compromised, and he's showing that he is compromised by all the changes he's had to make in what was the plan for a presidential delivery of goods at a G20 summit. He is so compromised that he can't even do the job that he's flown down there to do. Ben Rhodes, David Corn, thank you both very much for joining us. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.